This week in 40K.
Welcome to This Week in 40K. I'm Colin, and normally with me is Billy. For those that didn't see last week's episode, Billy and his wife have welcomed their new daughter into the world. It is their first kid. They've been trying for a very long time, he shared. So Billy's out for a couple weeks, and in exchange, we have traded him for today for a John Lennon, who is asking me for the hyperlink, which is very reasonable. There you are. For John Lennon, the Boy King Eternal. John, I think the Boy King nickname that we gave you so long ago is becoming less and less relevant as the younger and younger 40K people join. Have you noticed this?
I have noticed that. I really used to be the youngest competitive player in 40K, and I am not. I'm not anymore. Now I lose games to people younger than me, which isn't a thing that has happened in like a decade. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Cool. It's great because for me it's even more shocking, right? As younger and younger people come in. What I think is so funny is both on many shows over the last week, as we talked about the data slate, people said 40K is way too hard to get into, and I agree with that, and I think they're going to change that for 10th. But all of these young people are still getting into it. It may be really hard to get into, but it's not like we're not getting new players.
Yeah, I think people are just still willing to commit to something that takes a lot of effort, and high barrier eventer means that there may be less people getting in, but honestly, people want to go hard on their hobbies. People want to be invested in things. So the barrier of, you have to really be into 40K to be into 40K. It's very hard to be a casual 40K player, but a lot of people are willing to let it consume their souls.
That's true. That's fair. I've had multiple conversations with my wife where she says, "Are you sure you're not playing too much 40K?" That's a conversation we've had more than one time. Anywho, what's new with John? What's new with Art of War before we get rolling?
Yeah, absolutely. So here at the Art of War, we are gearing up for 10th edition, as you'd expect. We've actually completed an overhaul of the War Room, so I got to give the pitch. Make sure you check out the War Room. In case you don't know what the Art of War is, actually, I should start with that. The Art of War is our premium content creation and teaching platform. So you can find us on YouTube with a lot of free content. We're posting basically daily videos as we ramp up to 10th edition, as well as weekly battle reports. And then on our website, thewarroom.vhx.tv, that's where a bunch of the best players in the world, such as myself, Jack Harpster, Nick Donavati, Richard Seeger, and many more, teach you how to get better at Warhammer 40,000. We've recently made some upgrades in the War Room. So if you haven't been in a while, if you're a former member, now's a really good time to try it out. And on that website I mentioned, you can actually get a free 3-day trial so that you can see what it's all about. And we even have an app now. So we launched our own app that competes favorably with YouTube. Because you know how YouTube is awesome, but then you want to do something else on your phone while you're listening to things? You can't do that on YouTube, but you can do it with the Art of War app. So if you just want to listen to our coaching while you're doing other things, while you're running, while your phone's away, you can still do that with our app.
That's really neat. I didn't know about the app. So I always like to share that Art of War has a good intersection between understanding and competency. And what I mean by that is you can be really good at 40K and not have any idea how to share that information with others. When I started being good at 40K and we were doing early episodes of Best in Faction, I didn't know how to share what I was seeing at the table with people. It took a long time to figure that out. And I know, John, you talked about that when you first started coaching. It's like, how do I take so much of the stuff that's subconscious to me and put it out there? And I think that Art of War has really done that work to figure that out. And it's a big part of why I'm as good at 40K as I am. So big shout out. At this point, John is basically my 40K mentor. He's who I go to when I have no idea what to do. I'll say, John, I've got this situation and I have no idea what to do. And he'll say, here's a list. Go try it. And I'll say, great, I'll go try it. There was that fantastic back-to-back weekends where we both won tournaments with the Ultra memes. I think that was last year.
Yeah, that was last summer.
That's really fun. I'm like, John, nothing is exciting to play. You're like, hey, look, dreadnoughts that shoot people. And I'm like, oh, I'm in for dreadnoughts that shoot people.
It's dreadnoughts that shot Drukari. That was very important.
It was. And I did win a tournament because of my ability to deal with Drukari. All right. So now we're going to get into our top stories.
Our top story.
This is a funny one because the top story is obviously the data slate. And yet, it came out 5 days ago now. And Best in Faction, The Next Generation covered it in detail. Best in Faction covered it in detail. I'm sure Art of War has talked about it for hundreds of hours at this point. So I don't think y'all need us to go through the data slate. So let's just talk at the top high level of what we saw there. Some secondary changes, certainly to tone down GSC. And the abhor changes is so you're not stacking it up. And then guard, exactly the changes you'd expect, right, John?
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether or not they'd address the finial. I didn't know what they would do if they did. But as a guard player, I've made minimal changes to my list and basically minimal changes to my perception of the power level. Like, by all definitions, they are slightly worse, but not enough that I would lower them like a letter in a tier list or anything like that.
The Karsikan change to 6 mortals to only 1 unit is what it should have been in the first place. So that's kind of a whatever. And I think for the finial, they actually cut the half I didn't think they'd cut.
I completely agree. I thought they would do the opposite. And honestly, I was secretly hoping they would do the opposite, because in practice as a guard player, all the finial did, literally, only reason I bought it was that it was an aura of mortars ignore hit penalties.
Yeah.
Theoretically, its core never came up. Theoretically,
and plasma sentinels.
Kazarkins, yep, but the Kazarkin were never within 6 inches of it while they were moving. So I was like, all right.
I used the finial for the plasma sentinels to not have to shoot through forests and stuff. I was all over it.
That is true. Ignore dense cover with sentinels came up a couple times.
Yeah. And then Tyranids had a bunch of their nerfs undone. What's your opinion of that?
Really, really happy. I think it doesn't actually make Tyranids significantly better, but it does make Tyranids significantly more fun to play. Because a lot of the nerfs that we got were just you have less fun rather than you were worse. Because when those nerfs hit, because they didn't remove any of the last wave of nerfs, they removed several of the second wave of nerfs. Right. And those you may have not even noticed because Tyranid's win rate dropped by 0.3% when they put those nerfs in, barely even registered. So I'm really happy, and I think it'll make some of the lurk hive fleets significantly better. As a matter of fact, I'm all in on playing either a Jormungandr or a Behemoth kind of monster heavy list with Tyrant card, so that I can choose between OBSEC monsters and double cover, depending on the table that I'm playing on and the opponent I'm facing. But I honestly think that it does give just the lurk hive fleets that little extra edge to be the way to go, even though they already kind of were.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tau broadsides gain core. To me, this is a meaningless change. It's not enough for Tau. Am I wrong?
No, not at all. We always joke that it's a nerf because if people take broadsides, their lists are getting worse. So, broadsides are better. Take them, please. All jokes aside, you can actually do some things with them because you can now get one more meaningful indirect unit in. Because a 3-strong broadside with Shadow Sun is actually still decent indirect. Yeah. But it's not anything crazy. It probably doesn't change Tau's real position in the meta much at all. Broadsides weren't the problem before. They're not going to be the problem now. It's another option, but I don't think a broadside is significantly better than a Crisis Soon anyway.
Fair enough. All of Marines, Luke, basically Codex Warfare gets changed to cap for each of the 3 doctrines, 5 each. Mm-hmm. To me, this is a blow to Iron Hands that's not enough. What do you think of the Codex Warfare change?
Fully agreed. The biggest winner of this is probably Space Wolves, who were already well built to kind of go down the paths. But Iron Hands honestly barely register because Iron Hands have 4 really good secondaries. And now it's now you have 3 really good secondaries. I'm like, all right, probably enough. I'm going to be honest. I didn't have any wins that were within 15 points when I've played Iron Hands. I haven't had a game I've either lost or I've won by more than 15 points. So to me, it's not going to significantly change. And funny enough, the only loss I've had with Iron Hands, I wasn't taking Codex Warfare. So how good could it be?
They're actually in my top army right now in my brain. I think Guard is just as good, but Guard is harder to play. in my opinion. And so you end up with Iron Hands overperforming them. In my brain, that isn't what we're going to see in the tournament results, but that's in my brain how the lists match up.
I would agree. I think the biggest thing to me is that Iron Hands probably have a positive matchup into guard.
Mm-hmm.
They're both very good. I'd say that they're roughly equal into the field. But when you're talking the two best armies in the game, in my opinion, and yours as well, apparently, the head-to-head a little bit more than it does elsewhere.
Yeah, I actually think Demons is right there with them. But you don't see nerfs for Demons, and you don't hear people complain about them.
I would put Demons as number 3. Genuinely, if I were just ranking top 3 armies, I would put Demons as top 3.
Fair enough. And they got completely ignored by the data slate.
Blows my mind.
For like the third time.
Yeah,
like Demons have been good for a long time, and the data slate's just like, no, we let Chaos have something after what we did to CSM.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's pretty much. Oh, and then the final thing on the data slate is Deathwing Terminators lose Transhuman.
Yeah,
to me, hilarious. This is a death blow to the Deathwing lists. It just wrecks them. I think the Ravenwing lists are still completely viable, but they've got the problem every I'm playing with vehicles that shoot you list has. Don't get caught on terrain. Don't get caught going second against certain armies. But the Deathwing version that was winning literally everything that's all Terminators is just dead on arrival. Does that match your feelings?
Mostly. I've had a couple funny thoughts on this. One of which was like, oh, what if I just do Dark Angel's successors and give them baby transhuman and exploding 6s? And then I just basically trade you can wound on 3s for exploding 6s in melee. And I was like, oh, that'd be kind of funny. I still think they're good.
Okay.
Like, I take Terminators in other chapters and they're good. And it's like, well, this chapter they don't advance in charge, but they get -1 damage banner. Or like this chapter I can't spend a CP for 5 feel no pain, but they get a -1 damage banner. So in my mind, you go from 30. The 30 Deathwing Terminators is dead. I think you cap out at 10 Terminators at this stage. But I still think Dark Angels are really good. They have so much depth in that book, as you mentioned with Ravenwing. The line coming out doesn't really move the meter much, but
no.
They've still got some. They've got some interesting plays. So I honestly still think Dark Angels are close to Space Wolf tier, which is to say that they're one of the top 3 or 4 Marine chapters.
Yeah. I actually have played a lot of only Ravenwing, and I'm surprised we're not seeing that. The power of only Ravenwing is nuts, and we haven't seen a tournament performance, I don't think, that's mostly Ravenwing in a long time, weeks now.
I honestly think that this is going to be one of those cases like when Kraken kind of showed up after Leviathan was nerfed. I think we're going to start seeing Ravenwing.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, on we go.
What's new?
This is the section where we talk about 10th edition. You'll be excited to hear, John. What's new? There's very little 9th edition news other than the data slate, which we just covered. They did show us the full Lion rule set. We've talked about the Lion already. I don't think there was anything else of significance that I'm forgetting for 9th. We did see new models, but they're really 10th. So the newest thing, which I think is yesterday, is the new Terminator Librarian, who I think is fire.
Yeah, that guy's dope. I usually don't like librarian models, I'm going to be honest.
Right?
I like librarians conceptually. I just never like the models that they do for them. Because it honestly just looks like a blue space marine with like a hat. Like honestly, like a librarian is just like, yep, he's wearing a robe, so you can tell he's an HQ. Well, he's got a weird hat on, so he must be a librarian, and he's painted blue, and that's kind of it. And this guy, I like that he's like covered in runes. Like he looks like he's absolutely like the like future feral Jedi shaman warrior monk knight. It's like, okay, yeah, no, this I get what this guy is now.
When I saw the Desolation Marines, which I think look ridiculously silly, when I saw them, I thought, oh, Space Marine models are going downhill. But no, the Lion is an amazing, incredible model. And this Terminator is also great. And the 10th edition stuff we've seen is great. So I'm actually usually sarcastic and cynical about new Marine models. And I'm cautiously optimistic in this particular case.
Yeah, I like like they showed a new lieutenant as well, which I acknowledge is a new Space Marine lieutenant, but honestly, he looks badass. He was like a week or two ago, because they've only shown us Space Marine characters for 10th edition. They haven't shown us any units yet. But I'm really hyped for it. Everything I've seen so far for 10th TLDR, I'm really hyped for 10th. Just
for sure.
Everything I've seen has me like, yep, this is what I want.
Yeah, let's talk about a few of the big announcements over the last week, and we'll go through them relatively quickly. We do have some good tournaments to talk about this week. The first thing that they talked about was adding units to squads, which the internet said, oh no, it's Death Stars from 7th edition. But there was a lot of information they gave us that made it seem like, no, that's not what it is at all. What do you think of the characters being added to units rather than running themselves?
I think it's a good excuse to make characters less impactful in my mind. Because, a lieutenant, like, you can't, like, just for example, a Primaris lieutenant, because it's the one that they showed. Like, a Primaris lieutenant making one unit better, in my mind, is an excuse to make the lieutenant a little bit cheaper but less impactful. And I kind of want characters to be easier to add, less important to add. Okay. I'm generally okay with it. I'm hoping, because they've also kind of talked a little bit about relics and warlord traits or whatever's replacing them. There's a word for it. I can't remember what it was. Enhancements? Maybe that's the Sigma word.
Yeah.
But like you only get one. So it's not going to be like, this is, my custom chapter master. I've spent 4 CP pregame to give him a relic, a warlord trait, a second warlord trait, and also an upgrade of the chapter. And oh, by the way, you can never kill him.
Right.
So I'm really hoping that they just... I'm optimistic because I think they said it's only one character per unit.
Yeah.
You join a lieutenant to a unit, and then you don't add a librarian to that unit.
Well, they specified that a captain and a lieutenant can be together in a unit, but that's an exception.
If that's an exception, not the rule, I'm okay with that. I generally, I'm just excited for it because I think that if you're not stacking multiple layers of rules, it's a lot harder to get, because that's the problem that we always get with GW, is that they let us stack more things than they expected us to stack. Mm-hmm. And it's not, 3 things is 3 times as good. It's 3 times is like cubed.
Right.
It's exponentially better as you stack buffs.
And you get a character, let's call it like a chaplain, chaplain. And in order to understand what he does, you have to read his litanies, and then you have to read his warlord trait, and then you have to read, is he a chapter? Is he a Master of Sanctity or something?
Yeah, Master of Sanctity.
Yeah, is he that? Does he have a relic weapon? There's so many different things to check that it's deeply confusing. I think that this is actually an elegant change to two problems. One is that is the Lookout Sir rule. They keep having to tweak it because it keeps getting abused over the years. Mm-hmm. I think it's actually not a good solution to their problem of don't let you shoot characters. I think this is a better solution to that. But the thing I really like about this, John, is it actually reduces almost every army in activation units and deploy units by like 4.
That's
so true. And so that's less finicky things that have to be moved on a table. And I think that's a good important step if you want to make the gameplay faster and be more straightforward.
Yeah, that's really fair. I am very curious to see how this rule will work in full, because back in 7th edition, if you had a guy attached to a unit and you killed the unit, but the character was alive, he could go find another unit to jump on.
Right.
And I'm curious if how this is going to work. Like, do you attach pregame and that's it for the game? If he ends up single, can he find a new friend? Like, I'm just kind of curious. And then it's
how does damage work into those units?
That's true.
Right.
We don't know how.
Do you burns roll the people and then goes to the character, and then is he a character by himself at that point with no Lookout Sir? Yeah, there's all types of questions.
I imagine you choose, but I am not sure.
Yeah, exactly. I like the idea that the character would take all the hits first. I'm sure there'll be units where that would make sense if it was possible.
Yeah, well, there's definitely going to be, one captain with a Terminator armor and a storm shield that you attach to some friends, and he just tanks everything. But
attached to 10 Deathwing Terminators.
Yeah, who really need help tanking. Maybe just like a captain with a storm shield attached to like a Devastator squad or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Like the Space Wolves do. Mm-hmm. They have their Terminator friend in their Devastators. All right, so that's adding characters to the unit. Next up is they talked about vehicles and weapons. What are your thoughts on what they said about vehicles, the toughness range, things like that?
I'm really excited about toughness going up in general, because we're currently like in that kind of 2 to 9 range where you rarely see toughness 9, you rarely see toughness 2, you never see 1 or 10. unless I'm missing someone. Like, I'm not aware of any toughness 10 unless there's like maybe
No, and there's certainly no toughness 1. And they reduced how much toughness 2 there was on the way into 9th.
I noticed that, yeah. I think that just vehicles being a little harder to wound in general is just a good thing. It felt a little bit weird that you could step out an Eradicator squad and say, like, with every ounce of confidence, I am going to kill that rhino. Like, you no longer, like, once you step out an Eradicator squad and point it at a rhino, you genuinely don't even make a backup plan for if it doesn't work because the rhino's just gone. It's like, yeah, I hit on 2s, I reroll all of them. I wound on 3s, I reroll 1s, then I reroll 1. Then you don't get a save. Then, oh, wow, 2 went through, you're dead. You know, like, it's like, oh, yeah, I landed 2 of my 8 shots. You were automatically dead. All right, cool.
Yeah.
You get D6 plus 4 damage or something ludicrous. So I just want to see vehicles last a little bit longer because right now it feels like the only vehicles that have been good in 10th edition are ones that have ludicrous damage stacked on them, or sorry, ludicrous defense stacked on them, or vehicles that are
one of the 2
insanely cheap.
Yeah, I think those are all fair. I think that I'm hoping that this change is combined with more average vehicle numbers per game, but less of the high end. I don't want to see tables of spammed vehicles because it creates a playability issue where only heavy weapons work, blah 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 blah. So I'd like to see vehicles in every army. I'd like to put a wave serpent on the table. I'd like to know that a super durable transport that costs 150 points isn't a bad buy, right? So
I'd love to see 1 or 2 transports on the table. I hate it when the best answer is 7 wave serpents.
Right.
Because I've played like an edition where I didn't face a wave serpent, and I've played tournaments where I played against 21 wave serpents in a weekend. And it's like surely somewhere in the middle. There's got to be something to do, right?
Well, we had a raider problem, right, too. For all that time that Drukhari was so good, we had raiders were just bonkers. What if this thing shot well and didn't really die and was fast? And no. So, okay. Let's see. Oh, Universal Special Rules is the final thing to talk about because they had mentioned they were going to do this. But it was not obvious until they started showing us weapons, how they were going to do it.
Yeah. This is my favorite change, honestly.
Yeah, it's so like one of the things I've complained a lot about is what I think of as the paroxysm problem, which when they changed how Fight Last works for most of the game. They didn't update the wording on paroxysm, and it remained being the old way. I think this might be 8th. But this is an ongoing problem for GW where they'll write the same rule in 9 places and it'll be different in 2 of them. And also, we've just been stubbornly calling it Deep Strike for several editions now. And they're like, okay, fine, it's Deep Strike.
I know, it's a little... And then you'd have to clarify like which of the 3 different versions of Outflank your chapter had or something like that. This is all good. It'll make balance a lot easier. It'll make rules that interact with other rules a lot cleaner, because I honestly hate how they have to write rules like the Finial or the Reaper, where they're like, this ignores any abilities that modify or ignore damage. And it's like, oh, okay, so like, we all know that you want this to ignore Feel No Pains, but like, does a save ignore damage? Does -1 damage ignore damage? Does a pass off to a drone ignore damage? Like, how does this work?
When I first read the Finial, I didn't think it was supposed to do that.
Yeah, because it's not very obvious until you reach the community understanding of how it works and go from there.
Yeah, which is insane. Okay, yeah, I think we're all in on Universal Special Rules. I just want to see the word on the thing and know what it is. The final thing I'll say to you, John, is the Space Marine trait seems insane.
Oh, the reroll all hits and wounds against one thing?
Yeah, for everything in your army.
I agree. That does seem pretty good. So that may... We kind of just have to see what other armies get. Because if Space Marines end up as you get full rerolls to hit and wound against one thing, and you get no rerolls against anything else, that might be okay. You know, like because they showed what the lieutenant does now, and it's no longer an aura of reroll 1s to wound. So I'm assuming that's a replacement for reroll 1s to wound, not in addition to, because they said 10th edition is going to have less rerolls. So I'm kind of assuming the lieutenant's no longer what it is. So if that's like the only reroll Space Marines get is they pick one thing, then Space Marines might struggle into MSU armies, and then it's okay. and they're not very efficient at killing like whatever the new version of Drukhari Venom Spam is. Really, I just want to see what other chapters have or what other factions have, because the Tyranid one also looked quite good.
Mhm.
And so if they're all on that same power level, I think I could be okay with it.
Yeah, and I think it's a good catch too that it won't be good against MSU.
Yeah, because there's going to be situations where it's like, oh, which raider do I want to guarantee die this turn? And the Drukhari player's like, I honestly don't even care which one you pick. It's like, whatever, there's 6. Like,
All right. That's our news. Let's get into the most fun part. Here we go.
What's winning?
Meet the same bosses that we had last week. Meet the new bosses, same as the old bosses. I don't know what joke I was going for there. I really tried, and it didn't work.
I think you were going for
We have a number of big events this week, John, and I don't think I'm going to surprise you with any of the top finishes, but we'll see, right?
I think almost all of the big events this weekend were using the data slate, or were not using the data slate.
Yep.
Because it dropped on a Thursday, and so any big event had games starting on like a Friday, at which point you can't reasonably expect it to change. And then most people didn't want more than 2 days heads up. So I imagine this is going to be the last weekend of Iron Hands, Guard, and Drukhari and Dark Angels winning. And
I heard that.
Yeah, I know, I slipped. And then next week will just be Iron Hands and Guard winning.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So we'll start off by talking about the London Open, April 40K. Is this like a 6-month thing in the before the London Open happens again? Is that what this is? Do you know?
I don't know what the difference between the London Open and the London GT are.
Okay.
I mean, other than the fact that they're both run in London, they may not be related. How many people was it?
151.
Oh, good size event. Okay.
Yeah, and it was so the event owner is Zachary Becker. I don't know if he's the same guy from the London Open or the London GT or whatever it's called. Anyways, won by Manny, which is not surprising. Manny's been winning a preposterous amount so far this season, and he did it with Dark Angels. Woo! Let's see. Do we even need to talk about this list?
Can I just guess?
Yeah, do it.
Yes. 20 Deathwing Terminators.
25.
Damn it. Asriel 10 Desolators.
15.
15. Okay. You know what?
And he took a Primaris captain instead of Asriel, which I don't understand at all, but Manny's not here to explain himself.
Well, I guess he figures the Desolators never get shot, so they don't need an invuln, and the Terminators already have Storm Shields.
Fair. And it looks like this Primaris captain is 80 points, so that's probably what the deal is.
That is significant.
Wow, that's really inexpensive. I don't think I had realized how cheap he is. You missed the 2 land speeders of Multi-Melta. Yeah.
Well, and a Talon Master, right?
Well, 2. Everybody takes the 2, with one with Rights of War, one with Arbiter's Gaze.
Boy, that is consistent.
So Manny wins. Let's not talk anymore about the list that almost certainly got nerfed. Good job, Manny. Second place is Martin Cooper. I don't actually know Martin. He was playing guard. Let's see. What's surprising about this? I looked at this earlier and I didn't see anything, but I'm going to try again. Solar, tank commander. Well, so 2 tank commanders is a little unusual. Mm-hmm. He only has 1 unit of Cadians, just 1 unit of 10. That's unusual. He has 3 units of Karsakins. Interestingly, they're all the hotshot version. Like you, John, I like having, if we're going to have 3, I like the third one having just the normal plasma and melta. We talked about that before because you don't have the CP for all of them to do their trick.
Yeah, I think the mechanized unit is the one that wants to have a couple, if one of them is mechanized, because that unit's never really getting orders.
Mm-hmm. And
a las gun is genuinely better than a plasma gun if you get orders, which is a rare thing. But if you're not getting orders, plasma gun is, worth the 0 points you pay.
And they're in a Torox, so we know they're not going to have orders when they get up.
Exactly.
All right, so then 4 Scout Sentinels, 9 Mortars, 2 more Russes, a Torox, and then the Tempestus detachment that we sometimes see, which is a command squad with the Bulgrin Bodyguard, which is just a dumb, gross unit. Mm-hmm. And then 3 units of 5 Scions, and that's his list.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's there's not a lot of commentary here. It's just this is what's good. I'm surprised. I'm surprised he didn't take more Cadians. I think that we usually see 3 to 6 of the Cadians.
Yeah, I'm honestly still, I haven't put it on the table much. I'm still surprised that we see Scions in as many lists as they do. They keep doing well. There's clearly something there. But in my personal games with Guard, I've just never felt the need for the Scion Patrol. And it's
No,
not a
me
huge
neither.
investment. It's not a huge investment. It's not very expensive. Just like a 20-point upgrade on a command squad, and then you buy 3 45-point units. I guess I've just never gotten to the point where I want those, but they are cheap and useful. I've honestly just been taking the Death Corps Engineers as my cheapest possible deep strike unit.
Right.
And just said, yeah, they don't hit as hard as a Scion, but that's okay because they're not hitting at all.
Yeah.
Going really
good. So John, if first place is Dark Angels and second place is Guard, who do you think third place is?
I mean, I would honestly guess it's either Iron Hands or Demons.
It is Demons. Lewis Smith, and Lewis has a pretty standard, honestly, demon list. He's got Bellacor, Changecaster. He does have somebody called the Torment Bringer on Hellflayer. I don't know if that's the character on the chariot that Chuck likes.
Yeah, that's the Slanesh character on a Hellflayer, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's the middle one.
Okay, fair enough. Unit of Bloodletters, 3x3 Nurglings, 3x3 Fiends, 5/5 and 4 Flamers, 5/5 Fleshhounds, and then 2 War Dog Executioners with the heavy stubbers that are just kind of chilling in this list. Mm-hmm. Demons are so good that there's relative variety in Demons lists. Yeah. This is all the Flamers, if I'm not mistaken. And other than that, I don't know. John, do you have anything to comment on this approach to Demons?
The weight of mid-sized Demons, I think, is really good because at the end of the day, everyone's still rocking a 4-up and looking at shooting, at least, sometimes a 3-up. Mm-hmm. And so I personally really like the no monster approach to Demons. Because or the minimal monster where you take 0 or 1 monsters. Was there a big greater demon in the beginning of the list?
Bellacor.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. Bellacor is a little interesting. I
don't like him.
I personally don't think he's required either. But I do think that just having a plethora of mid-sized demons, like I keep wanting to say mid-sized bugs, but they're not Tyranids, of Fleshhounds and Flamers and Fiends is just really good because it's so obnoxiously hard to kill for most armies. There just aren't good weapons in the meta for reliably killing a T4 4-wound model with a 4-up invul and then a 5-up heal and pain.
Yep.
It's like, what do you want? Like, the best thing you can do is like get multi-meltas into it, but then you are very close to a demon army, and that's always a little sketchy.
The one that I think is amazing that we never see in these lists is the Beasts of Nurgle. Mm-hmm. I think having like 1 or 2 Beasts of Nurgle wandering around by themselves doing things is really hard to deal with, but whatever.
It really is. I actually really like them as like a psychic phase soak because if a psychic phase ever deals less than 7 mortals, it didn't happen.
Oh yeah, that's great. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, so it just really eliminates like the chip damage that might find its way into demon units.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Also, very hard to kill with mortars.
Also true. Next up is Clement Tornad, who we've talked about before, and I still don't know how to say his name. Mm-hmm. And he brought elves, which is exciting for me. This is Inari elves, which I'm surprised to see go forth. Good on him. He's got a unit of 3 warlocks. They've got Project Jinx and Quicken. Farseer on foot. The Incarn. Rangers, 1 unit of Rangers, 1 unit of 10 troops with the appropriate weapons. The Banshee unit you expect. Striking Scorpion unit you expect. Skyrunner Warlock with Embolden and Horrify. 2x3 Shroud Runners, a Wave Serpent, which is very surprising to me. And then Harlequins, Troop Master, 2x5 troops, a Death Jester, a Solitaire, 2 Star Weavers, and they're actually all light. This list shocks me, John. I am so hyped that this list got forth. If you had shown me this list, I would have said, oh, that's really good, but I would have said that person will go, 5-1. That's what I would have said. What do you think of this elf list?
That is, honestly, it is really cool. For Inari in general, it's always weird to me because I've never really gotten how Inari does well, but we do consistently see that players are able to take Inari to top levels. Mm-hmm. So I usually, I'm more of a fan of the Hail of Doom Eldar playstyle, but yeah. I want to like Inari because it is like a more combat focused elves, which is a much more honorable way to play them. rather than just tricksy and hiding. Honestly, I really wish. I wonder if the tournament streamed any games, because I would love to see this list in action. It has a lot of interesting pieces in it, but it sounds like it's hard and a little unreliable to make it all work every game. So clearly, the general here is playing a large part in the list success, because I don't think that's a list that's going to become a net list or anything crazy.
Yeah, if we're scaling, if we're looking at list difficulty to play on a scale of 1 to 10, this is a 9. This is not an easy list to play. I'm very impressed by the performance. The Inari lists are a thinking man's list. You have to really play them sharp. They don't just win. So good on him. I think that's really impressive. All right, so that's our top 4. Balak Amanribio got 5th, and since he's a big name, I will comment that he was playing Dark Angels. Okay, next up. So that's it for the London Open, April 40K. Nothing too surprising in that one. Next up, we have a 55 person. This one's in Australia, John, which is fun. Normally, we joke that it's not a This Week in 40K unless we talk about at least one tournament from England, because they do stuff all the time. We don't get to talk about Australia as often, so this will be fun. So this is a 55 person tournament. It is 5 rounds, and it was won by Guard. Huzzah!
Huzzah!
Yep, and this Guard list is also only 1 unit of... Oh, no, it's not. 2 units of Cadians. This one's got the combat engineers that John talked about. It's got the 3 Karsakins. The Warlords are all the thing you expect. Deathcore Marshal, Solar, Tank Commander, Command Squad. An interesting note is that the last list, I realize now, didn't have a Cadian Command Squad and only had the Tempestus Command Squad, which is different.
I think the Tempestus Command Squad in that style just starts on the table and pretends that it couldn't deep strike all along.
Right. I think that's
You can issue orders like normal.
Right. So 2 units of Cadians, Combat Engineer, 3 Karsakins, Sly Marbo, who I love to see sneak into the list as a 50-point, I can do stuff guy. 3 units of Armored, 3 units of Scout, 2 units of 3 Mortars, 3 Russes, and a Chimera. Just another completely solid, reasonable, minimal criticism Guard list, right?
Yeah. That's the way Guards should be.
There's some variety, right? But it's not a lot. So that was Brody Middleton. By the way, Brody Middleton's team is called Chadmech, which I enjoy. So I thought I would share that.
That is pretty good.
All right. So second place is Ewart, E-W-A-R-T. That's the first time for me. S-E-A-R-L-E. Cyril? I don't know. Ewart, we appreciate you. We don't know how to say your name. I'm sorry. Guard list. So he's got a Voidsman at Arms unit in his Guard list, John, which I thought was really interesting.
I do love Voidsman at Arms.
Is it just, this is a 40-point unit that does stuff? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a 40-point action monkey. It doesn't have any special rules that are going to blow your mind. It's like it has like a small chain gun, like a not particularly good one, and then like 4 las guns.
Is that really better? I guess he doesn't have any elite slot pots for Scion, so I guess that makes sense.
That would be my guess, is that he didn't have a slot to take a cheap guard unit, but still wanted a cheap guardsman unit.
Yeah, and that's absolutely what it looks like, because he's got too much heavy support, so that's where his slots are. Cadian Command Squad, Deathcore Marshal, Death Rider Squadron Commander, which I'm not experienced with. Solar, then 3x10 Cadians. Combat Engineer Squad that John talked about is showing up all over the place. 2x10 Karsakins, Sly Marbo again. This one's got horses. It's got 5 horses in it, John.
Nice. That makes me happy.
Yeah, me too. And then it's actually got a Death Rider Squadron of another 5 horses. Scout Sentinel, Mortars, 4 Russes, and a Torox. Good on him for going... did he go 4-1, but with crazy points because Guard. Good on him for the 2 top Guard lists are fairly similar, but they have their variety, so which is cool.
Yeah, I honestly really like seeing that he has the horses, both the Rough Riders and the Death Riders. The Death Riders are pillow-fisted, but more durable, whereas the regular Rough Riders hit crazy hard for their points while being very fragile. So I guess it's, 2 different types of melee units, one to kind of go in, do a little bit of damage and try to tarp it, and then one to kind of be a knockout blow.
I think that's fair. I actually think that Hank is onto something with Bulgrin. I'm really surprised that we're not seeing them in other people's lists.
Yeah.
After tons of reps with Hank working on guard and seeing him basically, I think he's lost like one tournament game in like 6 tournaments with them or something insane. But the Bulgrin are such a bully unit, and you can either put them out and say, I have all these tanks, would you like to shoot these Bulgrin instead? Or they just go beat the crap out of something, or both, right? So I think people should try them in the last few months of the edition. They're really fun and incredibly powerful.
Yeah, Bulgrin are quite good.
Next up, we have Eugene Orlov. And Eugene does surprise me a little bit, but it's not because we haven't been seeing them. It's Custodes, which we didn't talk about in the changes, but they did nerf the ability to put the 2 big defensive buffs on the same unit. I think that's to address I brought 30 people in 3 units, and that's my army. This doesn't have that, though. So this list is, I can't see, it's Emperor's Chosen. And it's got a guy that I don't know who is, John. His name is Lord Inquisitor Hector X. Who is that guy?
Lord Inquisitor Hector X is a Forge World Inquisitor who is better. He's much more durable than normal Inquisitor because he's like wearing like Terminator armor and carrying a storm shield and stuff like that. And he has like a fancy sword that's fine. He doesn't have like a plethora of special rules. He's just like a much more of a brick. And he's a caster. So theoretically, he's probably I would guess he's being used here because you don't need the leadership aura. I'm guessing that he's being used here as a psyker that can go get Warp Ritual and won't die if 5 idiots come poke him.
Right. Terrify and Dominate are the powers he has, by the way.
Terrify is a good leadership debuff, I think. And then Dominate, I think, is like I'm not even sure, honestly. It might be like a range reduction. I can find out.
That's okay. Trajan, 2 units of Custodian Guard, 2 units of, or actually just 1 Custodian, just a dude. Contemptor Achilles Dreadnought, Praetor. Let's see here. We've got 3. He's got like, this is like every unit that Custodes have. 3 Venatari, which I love. 2 units of 3 Praetors, a unit of 5 Witch Seekers, and then he's got an additional attachment that's got 2 Helverns in it. Really interesting Custodes list because he's got a huge amount of variety, and we've been seeing more spam than that recently.
Yeah, Custodes lists often tend to be a little spammy, so I'm happy to see that he's doing something else.
Yeah. All right, you ready for my surprise of the weekend?
I would love to hear it.
Here, so 4th place at that event was Thousand Suns. And we keep talking on Biff Pod. Chuck's like, I don't get it. This list got nerfed so hard in the changes to the game. How is this even doing it? So it's got Ahriman, Exalted Sorcerer, Infernal Master, 4 units of Rubrics, 1 unit of Terminators, a unit of 5 Chaos Spawn, 2 units of 3 Enlightened, and then it's got a special detachment that has a Lord of Change and Pink Horrors. It doesn't even have Flamers in that special detachment. I'm giving this guy the You Are Amazing award, this Jordan McGregor guy, because this list does not look good to me. What do you think, John?
It sounds very meta-dependent. The psychic output of Thousand Suns and Demons is actually still very impressive. Here in the Streamhouse, we actually had Nick doing pretty decently with a Thousand Suns Demon list that was like Magnus and Fateweaver. And it was just like, oh, if you're not one of the armies that blows that off the table with guns, you're taking 20 plus mortal wounds every psychic phase. And that was actually very annoying for a lot of armies.
That's funny.
I think Thousand Suns, even though they have a lot of fundamental problems, I think that keeps them from being a top army, but it doesn't stop them from punching up because Thousand Suns and Death Guard, in my opinion, both are armies that are really hard to reach the top level with, but they both have randomly good matchups into things that are better than them. Like how Death Guard was like really problematic for Blood Angels when Blood Angels were one of the best armies in the game. And then Thousand Suns actually are pretty good into Eldar. Even though Eldar are, in my opinion, much better army than Thousand Suns right now, you still don't want to play against Thousand Suns if you're an Eldar player.
Right. Okay, so now we move on to another England tournament. This one's called The Last of the Summer Winehammer 4, which doesn't sound like a tournament we talk about, but there sure were 48 people there. And it was won by a name that everybody in the competitive world knows, Mike Porter, John.
Oh, very nice.
Do you know what Mike took?
Well, I'm going to guess that it was Iron Hands.
No, Gene Stealer Colt.
Good for him. Awesome.
Yeah, so this Gene Stealer Colt is Rusted Claw. What? Why Rusted Claw, John?
Brother, what's in the list? Because I think Rusted Claw is the vehicle one.
Nexus, Patriarch, 1, 2, 3 units of small units of Acolytes, 4 units of 20 Neophytes, Kellamorph, Reductus, Saboteur, Sanctus, 2 units of 5 bikes. I think these are 5s. Looks like it. 3 Goliath Rock Grinders and a truck. I've actually played something very similar to this list.
Yeah.
But I did it as the custom Colt.
I would guess that it's trying to get around the weapons that normally tear Gene Stealer Colt in half and just last a little bit longer. Because Rusted Claw's thing is that they reduce AP 1 and 2 by 1. So
Okay.
I imagine that I haven't really been playing Gene Stealer Colt much with this codex, but I imagine that Gene Stealer Colt really hate that Guard and Desolators are showing up with all of this AP 1 and 2 indirect that wounds them on 3s anyway.
Yeah.
Because you don't need transhuman against strength 4 and 5 shooting. You just need to live. And
Right.
reducing the AP of each of those weapons by 1, honestly, is a good way to try and survive it. Yeah, I mean, Rusted Claw brings a lot of tricks. It has the stratagem for drive-by demolitions. It makes did you say he had a Patriarch in there?
Yeah.
Yep, a Patriarch with Entropic Touch actually is like kind of crazy in combat. It gets Tesla, which means that sometimes it's the same as a normal Patriarch, and sometimes it's 2 Patriarchs slapped together. If you took the Entropic Touch warlord trait. They also get a spell that's basically Jinx, where you just pick an enemy unit and it's just you improve the AP of everything that shoots it by 1.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to move us along here. I think that's all right. Gene Stealer Colt winning an event isn't too surprising. However, great on Mike for doing it.
And Rusted Claw is also quite interesting.
Yeah, I would say so too. How much do you think the Brood Swarm nerf affects this?
Very little in my mind. I'm sure that it'll affect list building a little bit because Brood Swarm was an automatic 15 that you didn't have to plan for. And now it's just going to be like, well, I should make a plan to get behind enemy lines, but I can probably get 12 on it. Like, it's not going to be that hard to score well on another secondary in that category. So Gene Stealer Colt dropping very slightly, but they're also very happy to see Dark Angels go away, so I don't expect much to change from Gene Stealer Colt results.
Fair enough. David Irving is in second place from Clumsy Orc Studios, which I think is a great name. Iron Hands, which sounds like it's not surprising, but just wait. Librarian and Phobos Armor, Primaris Tech Marine, Infiltrator, Contemptor, fine.
Okay.
3 units of 5 Scouts.
Okay,
And
I like that. Does he have
they're
some
all in Storms.
Yes.
That makes me so happy. Landspeeder Tornado, Desolation Unit, fine. Devastator Unit, fine. 3 Landspeeder Storms, we talked about that. And finally, an Astraeus.
I knew it was coming.
Did you know it was coming?
Yeah, that's really cool, and I like that he packed some more mission play around it. You said he had a Librarian.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Librarian's there to cast Psi
To
Steel
make
Armor.
the Astraeus obnoxious to kill.
Yeah, and then I'm sure that someone has the Iron Stone in that list, so that the Astraeus can rock around at -1 damage with +1 to its armor save. What and was this Successors?
Yeah.
Dare I ask if he was stealthy?
And then he also could make the Astraeus -1 to be shot at with the strat from the Librarian. Okay. So great. That's hilarious. That's wonderful. Next up is Paul Martin. Paul was rocking himself some orcs, which is another army that I love that we're seeing do well. And I think it's only being piloted by really good generals to do well, which is cool. Freebooters, very surprising. Deathkiller Wartrike, Warboss, 2 units of 10 Snegas, 2 by 10 Grots, 2 by 10 Commandos, 2 by 10 Mega Knobs, 2 by 10 Knobs, 2 Warbiker units, 2 Battle Wagons, and 2 trucks. This is similar to what I expect to see, but I've been seeing it in kill rigs more, and I've been seeing it as Death Skulls, not Freebooters.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that it's Freebooters. I mean, Freebooters brings the relic that's an aura of no obsec. Did he have like some kind of like bad flag or something relic in there?
The Bad Skull Banner.
Yeah, that one. I'm sorry, I do not have orc names memorized.
I think some orc players don't have orc names memorized.
Yeah, it does feel that way. Yeah, so honestly, that feels like it's just taking the, just taking the normal orc stuff and just making it a little bit better at board control. But Freebooters does provide plenty of fun buffs.
And really fun shooting buffs too.
Really fun shooting buffs. I'm sure we all remember just how scary Freebooters were on release.
Yeah. Okay. Because we've got a couple events left. Let's move on. I'll shout out that Stephen Platten got 4th place with Gene Stealer Cult. So Gene Stealer Cult is still one of the top armies in the game. We know that. Next up is the All-Stars Heat Hellstorms 40K tournament. This is also in England, John, just by the way. We're blown away. So this is 250 people in the country of England at 2-day competitive 40K tournaments, 3 different tournaments. It's just insane.
Yeah.
All right. So this one was won by Josh Roberts, who is, of course, someone that you know, John.
Mm-hmm.
And he had himself some Space Wolves. Captain on Bike, Primaris Lieutenant. And these are the successor you expect, Born Heroes and Whirlwind of Rage.
Of course.
3 units of Wolfguard with all the stuff. 3 units of Wolfen. 3 units of 10 Skyclaws with all the stuff. A unit of 10 Desolation Marines, because we can't play Marines right now without Desolation Marines, John.
Yeah.
And 2 units of Long Fangs with their Terminator friends.
Yeah, Space Wolves do it uniquely well. Yeah.
Do they get to put a friend with them? Is that why?
No, it's because Space Wolves have, that 1 CP ignore hit modifiers that Space Wolves have?
Yeah.
It's ignore ballistic skill and hit modifiers.
Oh, for F's sake.
Yeah, so you get the Desolator Squad always hitting on 3s, no matter what. And then if you happen to have like the Chapter Master on Bike, just, this unit hits on 3s, your rollings. Or, it's you ignore all modifiers that you want to, so then 2 guys are always hitting on 2s in that unit. Mm-hmm. It's a really, really efficient Desolator Squad, not gonna lie.
Okay. So this is a 50-person 6-round event, and second place is a guy named Christopher Langton. Do you know Christopher at all?
I don't know Chris, unfortunately.
Okay. I asked that because he literally went 5-1 with Necrons.
Good for him. What kind of what dynasty?
Nihilek.
Okay, I believe Nihilek is the Obsec one.
Yeah,
I
think that's right.
Obsec one, so it's the new replacement for the Obsec dynasty. The other half of their trade is very negligible. It's like ignore AP1 while you're in your deployment zone, which I'm sure comes up at least once a weekend.
Chronomancer, Technomancer. Sorry, share your thoughts in just a second. Chronomancer, Technomancer, 5 Immortals. I didn't mean to talk over you. 5 Wraiths, 3 Tomb Blades, 3 Tomb Blades, 4 Scarabs, 3 Destroyers, 3 Heavy Destroyers. The Silent King, Catan of the Void Dragon, who slaps in combat. Hexmark Destroyer, and there you go. So go ahead and finish your thoughts, John.
Yeah, Necrons still score really well, honestly. They have to be alive to do it, and the game has gotten a little bit higher damage output in arcs, in my opinion, which makes Necron's playstyle a little less appealing because you're more at risk of getting tabled by turn 3, which is kind of the problem with Necrons. But I like the Void Dragon there because the Void Dragon will help a ton against vehicle matchups. So if you ever can, find yourself into something like Iron Hands where they've got random land speeders flying around the place, or Dark Angel Ravenwing, or anyone besides Castrican Guard, then the Void Dragon actually can be really, really good.
Yeah.
I like the Void Dragon a lot. In more of a teamsy Necrons, it's just the biggest problem with him is just that Castrican exists. And the Finial just kind of kills the Void Dragon, which really sucks. Yeah. But I like that. I like that conceptually a lot, and I like that he's still taking a Silent King. Because a lot of people forgot that Necron still can just, instead of racking up 100 on turn 3, they can wrap up a 90 on turn 3. And oh, by the way, if you don't table them on your turn 3, it will get to 100 a turn later.
Right. And I think it's important to note that it's fine to go to a tournament and say, I'm going to beat everyone that isn't guard with Necrons. I think that's a completely fine way to go into a weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so third place, we don't need to go through his list. Mark Pilkington. Mark brought the meta Gene Stealer Cult list, 80 Neophytes, 30 Bikes, 10 Pure Strange.
Finish there.
What's that?
It's a very GSC heavy finish there in the podium.
Absolutely. All right, the final event we're going to talk about this weekend in the next 5 minutes is another Australia event. It's called the Warmaster 40K GT Series. I enjoy that all the tournaments were elsewhere this weekend. Is really fun. Let's see here. Ben Leeper got first place with his Chaos Demons list.
Ooh.
Chaos Demons, Bellacor, Changecaster, Torment on Hellflayer, Torment Bringer, excuse me. Mm-hmm. Nurglings, 2 Beasts of Nurgle units that are 3 each. I love that.
Nice.
Exalted Flamer, which has Chuck plays with a bunch of Exalted Flamers. I think they're amazing and super underrated. Mm-hmm. 2 units of 5 Fiends, 5 Flamers, 4 Flamers, and 3 Skull Cannons. I love that like all these lists have Skull Cannons. The AOS player in me loves that because I played them in AOS 6 years ago.
It sounds like this is a Disciples of Bellacor because you had a good mix of gods in there.
I didn't notice that. Let me look.
Because Disciples makes the Beast of Nurgle a lot better.
Yes, it's Disciples of Bellacor.
Nice. Yeah, honestly, just Bellacor in this does sound exactly like a Disciples list. Honestly, this is really good. I think people haven't fully caught on yet to how disgusting Skull Cannons are. Like, Skull Cannons, I think, are one of the best data sheets in the game. Yeah. They are criminal cheap for how good their output is, for being D3 plus 3 strength 8 shots that ignore cover at multi-damage, good AP. Like, they are... Skull Cannons are insane to me. I'm still...
Yeah, and they just run at you, which I think is great.
Yeah, they really can just run at you, or they can play fire support. They're good at everything. They can defend your backfield because they'll go clean out a skirmishing unit in combat. They're hilarious, and you don't want to charge them either because they're actually good in combat. Why? Yeah, Demon Data Sheets is just a really good list concept right now. Just take good data sheets, make it work because your army scores good points naturally and is also tougher than it should be.
Here's something interesting. This event is 4 rounds and 41 people.
Well, that is interesting. 4 rounds is such a weird number.
Yeah, I wonder if they did them all in one day.
They must have, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see a schedule on. Oh yeah, all in one day. Impressive. That would be tiring. Then second place is a guy named Callum German, and Callum took Knights, and I'm terrible at Knight lists, John. But it's Freebay Lance, and it's got 2 units of 3 Helverins, 3 Warglaves, Knight Errant with a lot of words after him, 2x3 Moirax, and then a Moirax. So it's 8 Moiraxes. That's not right. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Moiraxes, 6 Helverins. That can't be right. That's too many Knights. So anyways.
I imagine it's 5 of each. Maybe you just get
3 Helverins, 3 Warglaves. That's 6 Tiny Knights. Then 1, 2, 3, 4 Moiraxes. So that's 10 Tiny Knights. And the Knight Errant.
Yeah, okay. That sounds like the right number. What I'm curious, what weapons does he have on his Moiraxes? Is it a something Fist and Rad Cleanser? Hecaton?
The first 2 have Rad Cleansers and Siege Claws. The other ones, one of them has Lightning Locks and the other one has Graviton Pulsars. Okay,
that kind of makes sense. That is really, really good because the Morax and Errant combo lets you advance and charge, and then Moraxes are the only knights that inherently carry assault weapons in Imperial Knights, so they can then naturally advance and shoot, and by the way, they don't actually have to roll a hit. So you can make both of those Rad Cleanser Moraxes +1 to advance, +1 to charge, advance and charge, advance and shoot, no penalties. And then you spend a CP and one of those guys just moves 21 inches. So it's a really good build in a meta that has demons, which clearly there are at least some demons doing well in that tournament. Because the Rad Cleansers are insanely good value into Chaos Demons. So I really like that as a Knight list. Freeblade Lance, in my opinion, 1-10 ratio is still the way to play Knights. And the Errant plus Morax is just very efficient to get more board control, more combat out of a list. So that's kind of one of the 2 archetypes you can really do with a Freeblade Lance right now. It's either a Paladin list that does less Moraxes and shoots harder, or it's an Errant list that does Rad Cleanser Moraxes and goes faster. Doesn't punch harder, just punches faster.
So since that's a 4-round event, we'll just cover those 2 since they're the 4-0 people. So there we go. So, just final thoughts in the last minute here, John. What did you hear from that meta report? Is it about what you would expect? What were the surprising things?
Not a ton of surprises there. A lot of the top meta is what you'd expect, but there is still a decent amount of variety in it. And I think that the top echelon of the game, which is like the number of armies that can actually win an event, I think is a little larger now than it normally is. I think there are everything that you said is like, yep, that's like a good army that I totally can see getting a podium. I think Inari was the one that was probably the most standout, and then the Thousand Sons, of course.
Necrons. I was surprised by Necrons.
Oh yeah, the Necrons as well. That's fair.
Yeah.
But I like that we have a slightly larger umbrella of who can compete at the top right now. And I think that the FAQ probably could have done a little bit more to some of the top armies, but is only going to widen the field a little bit at the top, which I'm excited for.
I would have liked to see Guard hit harder. Guard's performance this weekend is I think too good. Mm-hmm. But it is what it is. So there we go, John. Was that fun?
I love it. Always love coming in here and hanging out with you, Colin.
Yeah, exactly right. So Billy's hopefully back next week. And this week we've got what?
I'm just saying, man deserves a break.
Yeah, but he's wonderful, and I miss him. Is that okay?
He is wonderful.
He's a 49ers fan, which I don't like that particularly. So during the football season, the first 90 seconds of the show, John, is us giving each other crap about football. And then it gets into the show. And then a bunch of our fans are like, we don't care about this. And we're like, yeah, so? Hang through the first 2 minutes where we talk football. Someone cares. Yep. All right. So thanks so much, John. Really appreciate you hanging out. This week, guys, we don't have Biff Pod. We do have TNG this weekend. I don't know what their topic is. I'm supposed to ask that before the episode, and I forgot. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, John. This is This Week in 40K. We'll be back Tuesday morning at 7 a.m., just like we are every week. And he's John Lennon, and I'm Colin, because someone has to be. Bye, everybody.